Hey everyone, welcome back to Neural Networking with Ketan. Today we are joined by a truly accomplished leader in data science and artificial intelligence, Mr. Amit Dingare. Amit brings over 15 years of experience to the table, having worked across various industries including manufacturing, retail, CPG, and pharma. During that time, he has not only built and led high performing AI teams from scratch, but also consistently delivered real measurable business value through them. This kind of track record speaks for itself. Amit, welcome to the show. We are excited to hear your insights today. In this episode, Amit will share his insights on the evolution of data science and AI over the past decade. We will delve into how data intelligence has transformed business operations in manufacturing, retail, finance, and more. Amit will also shed light on the challenges companies face when implementing AI solutions. But fear not, we will also explore how AI is helping overcome these hurdles. To wrap it up, we will delve into exciting world of generative AI, discussing its potential impact across industries and exploring why some businesses might be hesitant to embrace AI. So buckle up data enthusiasts because this episode promises to be a fascinating look at the present and future of data science and AI. So let's go to questions now that we had for you, Amit. So starting first come first, in the past decade, you have had an amazing career journey in the world of data and AI. So, how did you transition from supply chain and analytics to leading data science and AI teams? What motivated you to move into AI?
Yeah, so right after my undergrad, I started working in supply chain and was doing supply chain specific analytics at that point, largely forecasting. So I used to work in retail, doing demand forecasting for distribution centers, so largely inbound demand, and kind of like always had a inclination for data and finding insights from that, right? So I always believed in this kind of like DIKW cycle, data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. At that point, of course, there were not many educational opportunities. There were no like specific courses on data science or anything like that. The closest you could do is go to school and learn statistics, right? But I was using at that point largely started career in SaaS software, then learned R at that point, which actually had just come out because the funny thing is I was work for a retailer and they only had like a few licenses of SaaS. So getting a SaaS license for a junior person was hard. So that's when I kind of like found about R, and R had open source that time. So we used to code in R on mainframe basically. And then I realized that, you know what, I need to actually I really enjoy this working in data, so maybe I can probably spend more of my career on doing that and maybe apply my skill set and my knowledge to different areas. So decided to go to business school. That was the closest opportunity I could find at that point. And then after business school, I actually started working in pre-merger valuation side. I was still using data, a lot of modeling, but largely in Excel, a lot of Excel-based modeling. And then this is around 2011. That's when the kind of like the world of data science and things had started emerging. I think if I'm not wrong, AlexNet had just come out at that point, and things have we were starting hearing that there is this thing happening, and many companies were curious about it. So that's where I used to work for a consulting company, one of the big fours, and they were establishing their data science practice. So I was asked to come and join that, and I did, and one thing led to another, and I kind of like kept myself up to date with what's happening. I learned more from statistical learning to more machine learning, then to deep learning, and now to Gen AI. So kind of like, I think one thing that helped me is my innate interest in this area, and then second is just to kind of like keep myself updated with what's happening in the world.
Nice. So I can see that you have had that diverse journey right from starting in 2011 with those forecasting models to programming in different languages to getting used to now the generative AI. So I'm sure that you must have had amazing career highlights through this journey over the years. So we just wanted to ask you this: can you share a specific accomplishment or breakthrough moment in your career where you felt that challenges were truly worth it, and any learnings, be it a project that didn't go planned or an obstacle maybe you faced that taught you a valuable lesson?
There are too many to actually talk, and we'll probably spend a whole session in just those things. But I would say, just to take my journey a little bit forward, so I worked in consulting. After consulting, I joined a digital marketing agency, then worked in manufacturing, and now I'm in the more tech area. So while working in the digital marketing space, I would say one of the things that I could call breakthrough for me was I built a product along with a few of my team members. It was kind of like a homegrown product that we actually built for our clients. And the idea was people had actually connected cookie information for attribution modeling. And this is something that happens in digital marketing is you want to attribute credit for a particular sale to different forms of media, right? Could be display advertisement, search advertisement, and so on. So for a long time, people were connecting the cookie paths, and that was cookies were quite prominent at time, at least the third-party cookies. Now, third-party cookies are going away. It's becoming more like first-party cookies. But that time, we could actually construct the cookie path and understand, do a lot of like attribution modeling. One of the things that I actually thought of is, hey, if we are already building this cookie path, and if we take the activity of that cookie on a client's website, right? And if we connect that, we could actually track all the actions that happened in the journey, right? And so that was a little bit of an innovative idea where we actually took the cookies from like click and so on and combined those with the client's cookies. And by doing that, now we were able to actually connect the interactions with the actions that happen. And we built a product called P3, which stands for it's a purchase propensity prediction. And that worked out to be quite well. We were actually able to predict some of the future purchases of the clients through this product. And we made actually a couple of sale of that product to our clients. So I would say starting with like largely in the service industry, we actually built one of the first products for the company. So that was, I would say, something that I still remember and call as one of the best accomplishments. The second would be, I would say, when I was working for a healthcare company, I was brought in to actually build their machine learning platform. And it's not that they didn't have a machine learning team before, and they had tried to basically make sense of the healthcare insurance data. So their clients were largely healthcare insurance providers. They had tried to take that data and build certain models, but the success was not that good from the models. And I was brought in. Of course, this was a new industry for me. I had moved from digital marketing to this healthcare company. And so there was a lot of learnings. But one thing that actually I quickly learned within a couple of months is the way the previous team had solved the problem is they treated this large problem as a single problem. And then build models to cater to that single thing. And that's where their accuracy was not good enough, and it had not really created the traction that they had hoped for. So one thing I did was I actually broke that problem, that larger problem, into several smaller problems and built models for each of those using machine learning, classical machine learning, built models for each of those smaller problems. And that actually worked out to be quite well. We were actually able to see a much higher success, much higher accuracy in terms of prediction. And that made a pretty big business difference for the company. So I would say that's kind of like my second accomplishment that I would say is just looking, and that again has reinforced the belief that sometimes you require a different perspective when you look at problems, right? If you have looked at a problem multiple times, I think it's always good to bring some fresh eyes and look at a problem differently, because people can think of it in a different way. And given that I was very new in that industry, I didn't have the baggage of like knowledge, so I could kind of like ask stupid questions, but those stupid questions led to like taking down that problem. So those were, I would say, my two accomplishments or highlights of my career. In terms of learnings and things that didn't go well, well, there are too many to tell. Sometimes, right?
I
That's
think that's the field of data and AI we are talking about. Yes,
right, right.
yes. You
It's
got to
like,
give some to the
and I
field
would
as
say,
well.
yeah, it's like.
Yes.
But I would say I was sort of like talking about those specific problems or where it didn't work. I talk about learnings that I had from them, right, or why they didn't work out, right. And there were three common themes if I think about them, right. One is the problems were actually not very well defined; they were very vague, and people had not done enough due diligence to really get to the first principles behind it, like what exactly we need to do to solve the problem, right? In many cases, it was just kind of like thought as a data science / AI problem when sometimes it was not, right? That was kind of like one thing that emerges. The specifications were not clear, the problem statement was not clear for both even the stakeholders as well as the data science teams. Second was there was lack of business ownership as well. Like we got a problem, but I think it was largely, in many cases, somebody's paid project and not the real priority for the business function, right? And so as such, either because the person left the company or got busy with something else, we did not find anyone to take the ownership of that problem. And in many cases, even when we had good outcomes, there was no real adoption behind the things, and we could not create value, right? So that's also very key, is to have a business ownership behind a problem statement, right? Somebody needs to own that, and it should be a wider department or business function ownership than just kind of like one person ownership, and should be a priority for the business function as well. And then the third is the pretty ubiquitous one is the data, right? If you have like bad quality data, garbage in, garbage out, right? If you don't have insufficient data or data not captured at the level that you want, at the granularity you want, that could lead to wrong outcomes as well. So people think, oh, we have the data, but when you look at the data, either nobody has thought about the quality issue or nobody has thought about the granularity issue, right? Sometimes, and that's where that lack of education comes in, is, well, if you have to train models, you can't have summarized data, you need to have, and sometimes people, at least the stakeholders, don't understand that. People spend a lot of time discussing about solutions and things, but then when it comes to actually building something, nothing comes out, nothing of fruitful nature.
Right.
So I would say those were my three keys that I had from my past experience.
I can clearly see the practitioner in you talking about all the things. And what is more fascinating for me is the diversified domains that you have worked in. You talked about healthcare, somewhere you talked about advertising, marketing agency, and you talked about manufacturing. So I think that has really come out in those learnings as well as the highlights which you mentioned. So going forward, for our listeners, it would be important to have that industry specific discussions with you to understand, since you have worked on what you say different domains and different problems. So I'm sure there are stories that we can get from you on that front. So data science and AI evolution, it's something to begin with. Given your experience, how has the data science and AI landscape transformed in past decade? What are some key developments and areas for improvement which you see?
Yeah, so when I started my career, I mean, this is even before the phrase of data science was invented, right? Focus was largely on the statistical modeling, right? We used to do a lot of forecasting, or even some of on the machine learning side, the initial models were all statistical learning based, right? A lot of regression and then clustering and so on, right? I started I think this is when AlexNet came out, 2011 or 12 timeframe. I started kind of like seeing a trend where the classical machine learning started getting adopted by businesses. I'm sure it was being adopted by large tech companies before, but not there. And that's when I saw more tree-based models being used on tabular data quite a bit. So from I would say 2015 to 17, 18 timeframe, That was where tree-based models, the XGBoost and random forests of the world, they actually dominated the data science space quite a bit. And then I think that's when compute became quite pervasive, especially with the ease of availability of compute in cloud. You could easily spin up like GPUs to train deep learning models. I started seeing use of deep learning quite a bit from 2018 onwards, where people would like leverage it on top of unstructured data, leveraging GPUs and so on. The cost of like training models had come down quite a bit, and it had become much easier to get GPUs as well. So I saw that like until 2022 or so, like a lot of deep learning, and it's still there. I'm not saying it has gone away. All of these things are still there, but in the latest trends is, I mean, we all know it's all generative AI right now, right? I think 2022, after I think ChatGPT came out, that became the big buzz, and now companies are trying to basically spend time, and that has become a priority for many companies to leverage Gen AI to get business value. So that's how I see the evolution of this field. But I think there is a time and place for each of those things, right? You can't. I don't think these are largely. I don't think these are sequential things. These are like largely parallel things that have happened.
Yes, very true of what you have said, from the three aspects where it was machine learning at the beginning, and then it was deep learning, and then it went towards the generative AI side of things. So now going and talking about data and AI in different sectors. So you have worked in manufacturing, retail, CPG, IT and advertising, and now you are in finance. How has data intelligence transformed how businesses manage operations, for example, sourcing, supply chain, procurement across these industries? So what are your views on that? And if you can share a couple of examples, that would be great.
Yeah, I think what I'm seeing is there is a wider acknowledgement that the data science and AI and techniques such as that, they actually can create value, right? In the first, say, 5-6 years of my career in this area, there was a lot of skepticism about this, right? People thought, they just thought it was like largely true for academic work and not true for, but with the success of like many use cases and across different industries, I'm seeing that there is a more openness to kind of like adopting these things. So that's something that I'm seeing. But that being said, the adoption is not even across both different domains as well as different functions, right? There are some functions that are adopting it much faster, and some industries are adopting it much faster. Like an example would be digital marketing, right? Where I work, the adoption of data science techniques is quite high, and that's largely a function of two things. One is the data is largely good, right? It has been at least captured for a long time, and third is it's large amount of data, which is highly difficult for humans to make sense of, right? That's where these models can help you with like getting from that data to insights aspect. But in other areas where I'm still seeing some challenges, manufacturing being one example, there is, especially given that the industry is old and there is not enough, for a long time, in many companies, this is true of many companies where the data gets stored in silos, not in one place. There is a big obstacle in terms of like applying techniques at the scale, right? So because then you can't really apply it. So you have to first bring data to a common schema, common format, and then apply AI or data models on that. So I think I'm seeing that while there is a large adoption, there are enough obstacles to overcome in that area.
Very rightly said by you. So one common challenge that you already have said is the data challenge, and data being in silos, and then you need to work your way through that data warfield as we can maybe call it. But I also want you to highlight on some other common challenges companies face when trying to solve problems with AI in different industries. So let's focus on the financial sector, since you are currently working on it. What are some typical challenges, and how is AI helping address them?
Yeah, so I think use of AI to gain insights from unstructured data, right? is one challenge and that's one use case that's actually quite prominent in this industry right now. For a long time, right, people, tabular data and applied AI in the financial sector. But with the emergence of AI and specifically large language models within GenAI, now you can take large corpus of text data and derive insights from that. Of course, that not to say that it's 100% accurate. There are still issues around hallucinations and so on. But I think that is one use case where I'm spending my focus on, because if we could do that, that will help us actually create a much higher scale and create value. So that's kind of like one aspect that's a high priority for me. But when it comes to like main challenges apart from data, I would say the mindset is a big challenge. Okay. And I've seen two different spectrums on that, right? One spectrum is this skepticism about this thing that, hey, many such fads have come in the past. This is just another fad, when people still believe that. And this will go on, this will at one point go off, and we'll basically do our work the old way, right? So that's kind of like one. And that is, I'm not saying that any new trend, right, is not without its problems, right? I mean, there is, of course, a lot of hype and so on, and sometimes when results don't match the hype, that creates a negative impression. So, but then people who have that mindset, they quickly gravitate towards those and use that as kind of like as a confirmation bias, right? So that's kind of like one spectrum I've seen. The other spectrum I've seen is like, hey, AI can solve all the problems. It's kind of like AI is this magic wand. It can kind of like, no matter what I give it to it will figure out and solve all the problems. And that also is quite dangerous mindset, right? And that basically creates issues. So one of my main jobs right now as a chief artificial intelligence officer is to set the right expectations with different stakeholders, right? To understand where each of the main stakeholders, and then to bring them to that kind of like reality and kind of say, yeah, this is not a magic wand, but it's also not something that you can completely discard, right? You can create, with the right use cases, you can get the appropriate value from this. That's where I'm spending a lot of my effort right now.
Yes, I think you rightly said that striking that balance is something very difficult, but then that's the job you need to do every day in, day out. That these are maybe three things possible with artificial intelligence, but perhaps these two may not be possible with artificial intelligence. So now,
or not yet.
Yeah, not yet.
Until we have the AGI or something, maybe once AGI is there.
Yes, probably then in AGI's case we won't not be recording this podcast, but someone else, our what you say, bots or someone else would be recording this podcast.
Our avatars, yeah.
Our avatars, yes, you rightly said, our avatars. Yes, a very right word there. So now talking about the future, generative AI, everyone is talking about it. Which industry do you think has the most potential to leverage this advanced technology?
I don't think any particular industry will have any advantage. I think you will see companies where they have good focus on data, on the curated data, basically, to data quality, data storage, and having that mindset about I think you will start those companies emerging in each of the industries, right? So you will see like these winners and losers coming in various industries. I can't say enough about the importance of the data strategy, right? A lot of companies talk about AI strategy and so on, which is quite good, but that is only applicable if there is a right data strategy behind it, right? If you don't have good data, if you don't have data of the right granularity, you won't be able to actually take advantage of that. So having that clarity in terms of what are the potential use cases, and then going that second order thinking where, okay, what now, apart from AI, what I need to think about to make those AI use cases? Well, data is one. Okay, what data it is, what quality it is that we require. So thinking about that is very important, and companies that have that mindset, you will start seeing that then emerging as winners. And that goes along with the cultural shift as well, right? If companies basically who take the effort to think about that also have the right mindset to change the company culture in the direction of like thinking about this as another lever that can create business value. And I think when those things are coupled, you will start seeing those companies emerging as the winners in the future.
You said a right word, culture, and that I feel that is a direct proportion of adoption, because culture and adoption are somewhere tied
Yeah.
to each other. So we see many industries actively adopting AI, but others seem hesitant. Why might some businesses resist implementing AI solutions?
Yeah, I think I touched upon this a little bit early on, but at a high level, right? I mean, human nature is in general averse to change, right? And especially, with the whole hype in media, as well as the doomsday prophecies that are coming out, right? It actually creates a negative impact, right? So by providing the right information and setting up the expectations correctly, companies can actually bring their masses and move towards that adoption journey, like that cultural change that we talked about. So I think my answer would be that it's the resistance is coming from either from the past experiences that many people had, right? There were some cycles. I mean, as you know, there is a famous thing about AI winter that happened, right? Some people have seen that, especially who are long enough in this industry, that this came in and went and then fizzled out, right? So I hope I'm quite sure that's not the case this time. So we have to basically make sure that, I think, again, I go back to that setting the right expectations thing, kind of like parse the actual signal from the noise, right? And provide the right information to your stakeholders is the key of chief AI officers, state officers, and to make sure that we keep the organization grounded to the reality and not get kind of like swallowed in the hype.
Right. So I just had a couple of follow-up questions on this one. So my first follow-up on this one is you talked about different roles. Like one role you mentioned, chief AI officer. So that role didn't exist in the past. So from a future perspective, what are the top one or two roles that you see evolving in this generative AI space that you feel that they were not perhaps existed 5 years ago, but these roles may exist in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think the two roles I would say that I think you'll start seeing more ubiquitously: chief data officer and chief AI officer, right? I think the role of and these two roles will work very hand in hand in terms of like making sure that we use AI to create business value, and then to make sure that we do the right use cases and get the right success. We have the data in the right format, in the right granularity, and so on. So I think the data strategy and AI strategy will become part of the business strategy going forward, right? Because in my mind, for a long time, companies made a mistake of embedding AI into IT or something like that, which again tend to bring a cost center nature to the AI function. But in my mind, AI is very similar to, like, say, marketing or financial engineering, right? It's a tool to create business value, right? As more and more acknowledgement happens to this viewpoint, you will start seeing companies putting right emphasis on that, and you will start seeing at least these two roles emerging quite a bit.
That is very what you say valuable for the audience as well. So the another question that I had is, you talked about many things when we talked about why some organizations are not looking to apply AI, and I got a theme in that discussion. Do you think that maybe the AI practitioners can improve upon certain documentation practices on the explainability and responsibility part, where it may then make it comfortable for the business users to understand the technology and maybe apply in use cases?
Yeah, I think making the models explainable, right, and making sure that they meet the meet the security standards and meet the ethical standards is quite important, right? I think until we do that, until we make sure that these models are secure, safe, and ethical, and also explainable, I think adoption is going to be somewhat of a challenge, right? So fortunately, there is actually enough emphasis on this topic, right? Many companies, as they are rolling out their large language models, I think they are thinking about AI safety, AI security, ethics, right? All of those things are embedded. And so I'm seeing that the community is actually focusing on that. And then I think with the right focus from organizations in terms of like dedicating enough talent towards these areas, you'll start seeing that a lot of the barriers in adoption getting smoothed out.
Very true. Very true. So I'll just pick your brains also on the governance part. So can you throw some light, like how do you see that coming up in inside enterprises? That okay, maybe here are the tools or here are the frameworks from a governance AI governance side in enterprises.
Yeah, and in my mind, governance has, I think, three components, right? One is the data component, right? Again, you can't emphasize enough on the importance of data and good data, right? That then there comes the practices for building the models, right? And then finally is to the adoption and sustainment of the models, right? This is in many cases, right? People are for the AI side, there is a whole AI ops, ML ops, right, area, but there is no overarching at this point, overarching function or a framework that connects these three things together, right? I do see that as a gap, that the frameworks that is I think DevOps exists, which is largely used on the data side, but that's siloed from the ML ops, right? And that's siloed from the change management portion that happens towards end. I feel there needs to be a framework that connects these three things, right? And sits at a higher level and provides the right emphasis on each of those three buckets. So I feel like maybe Converge or companies like others, like you guys, can take maybe an initiative in this area just to connect those three buckets.
Definitely, definitely. So, Amit, the last question is what advice would you give to someone looking to leverage data and AI to grow their business?
Yeah, and I've been thinking about this, right, for a while now. I feel like the best way, don't boil the ocean, right? I have made that mistake in my career in the beginning, I spent quite a bit of time on things, and this is again before COVID, where people had longer attention spans, right? And I think if you keep somebody waiting from the results for too long, you're bound to have issues around change management. So and this has become a much bigger problem after COVID, where people want results much faster, right? So the mantra that I have found to be kind of working post-COVID world is kind of like you have to focus on the quick wins, right? And then invest in the longer term opportunities. But you have to keep delivering constantly. Don't let the perfect be an enemy of good is a saying that I kind of like live by. Is you have to, even if it's not perfect, you have to start showing incremental value, right? So you require that agile mindset, right? Okay, I'm going to do this two tasks, deliver, show the results, and then going to build on top of that, right? That mindset has to not only be employed in the development, but also in terms of rollouts, adoption, getting the change management, and so on. So I think my advice would be for leaders and companies to think in that spectrum, really adopt the agile in your day-to-day work. And the second thing I would say is you have to make decisions in different ways for different circumstances, right? Sometimes consensus is very important, right? Because then you get much longer adoption and it stays for longer. But consensus can take time, right? So if you are in that situation where it's taking too long, sometimes you have to focus on the speed and get an executive mandate and make things happen. And then in parallel, you can think about getting the consensus, or once you show the results, consensus will come on your side anyways. So I think trading off between decision by consensus or decision by authority is an important aspect that leaders can follow as well.
Very, very correctly what you said, and very good articulation that you have done. So thank you very much for being on this podcast and spending this time with us. So for the audience, I will just highlight which I felt, and you can add on the three key takeaways that at least I had. So one important point that you said, it's striking the balance to really come up and understand the correct problem statements which AI can solve for you. Second thing was having good data is of uttermost importance, and that is where the focus area should be, along with the first point that you mentioned. The third thing is having that agile mindset and having that incremental journey, like one example that you gave where you broke that problem into three different things, and there were smaller models that you built, and that kind of gave very good results. So that was the example for that. So I think these three key takeaways, and you can add on if I have missed a couple of key takeaways.
No, I think you captured those well, right? I think the only thing I would say is that as a part of that agile mindset, getting the quick wins is very important, and that basically helps you with the change management, earning the trust of the people. So I think that just to underscore the importance of that agile mindset.
Yes, with that, we come to close of another episode of Neural Networking with Ketan, and we wish Amit that he gets many more quick wins with a lot of gains going forward. Thank you, Amit, and I'm sure that some point of time you will be again back in the next series of Neural Networking with Ketan. Thank you very much.